Look at this, 23,000 acres of prime California farmland, world record production, $243 million in annual economic value, all of it worthless overnight. This isn't a drought, this isn't a wildfire, this is something far more terrifying. On September 9th, 2025, Imperial County, California declared a state of economic emergency. The reason? The last sugar refinery in the entire state just left, packed up, moved to Minnesota, and took California's 150-year-old sugar industry with it. But here's where it gets insane. The farmers, they found out from their employees, not the company. The governor's office, they're monitoring the situation. And the 700 families who just lost everything, they're standing in fields of crops they legally cannot sell to anyone else. This is the story of how one corporate decision executed an entire region's economy in 90 days, and why what happened in Imperial County is about to happen across the rest of California. Stay with me, because this gets so much worse. First, let me tell you who just destroyed Imperial County. Spreckels Sugar Company, the Brawley facility, operating since 1947, nearly 80 years. This wasn't some struggling startup. This was the last sugar beet processor in California. But Spreckels isn't owned by Californians anymore. In 2008, the Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative bought them out. And here's the pattern you need to see. 2005, SMBSC expands into California. 2006, shuts down Mendota facility. 2025, shuts down Brawley, the last one standing. Over the past decade, this Minnesota cooperative poured $100 million into the Brawley plant. Sounds good, right? Investment, commitment. Except, April 22, 2025, they announce closure. Why? Because they'd need another $100 million to keep it running. And here's the direct quote from SMBSC. They said Brawley had been operating at a loss for over a decade. Wait. You invested $100 million into a facility you knew was losing money? That's not a business decision, that's asset stripping. But here's the part that should terrify you. When Imperial County officials tried to find a buyer for the plant, SMBSC said this: "We will never sell the plant. We will only close it down." Why? Why refuse to let someone else save these jobs? Because of something called the federal sugar quota system, and this is where it gets dark. Here's what nobody's telling you about the sugar industry in America. The USDA controls who can process sugar through something called the federal quota system. Only approved facilities can process sugar beets. And here's the kicker. When the Brawley plant closes, California's quota doesn't disappear. It transfers to Minnesota. SMBSC just absorbed California's entire sugar quota into their Minnesota operations. They now control more of America's domestic sugar supply, and they did it by shutting down the competition, which was themselves. This is corporate consolidation disguised as a closure. But for the farmers in Imperial County, it's a death sentence. Here's why. Sugar beets are not like wheat or corn. You can't just harvest them and store them. In Imperial Valley's heat, they start decomposing immediately. They must be processed within 24-48 hours of harvest. The nearest other sugar beet processor? Idaho, Montana, over 800 miles away. Legally, these California farmers cannot ship to out-of-state processors without approval, which requires, you guessed it, quota allocation, and SMBSC controls the quota. So these farmers are sitting on 23,000 acres of crops that are physically impossible to store, legally impossible to process elsewhere, economically worthless to harvest, and SMBSC, they refuse to sell the plant because selling it would mean giving up California's quota. This isn't a closure, this is a calculated extraction. Now here's the part that should make your blood boil. Imperial County isn't some random farming community. These farmers in Brawley, they hold the world record for sugar beet production. Let me paint you a picture of what Imperial County just lost. The average sugar beet farm in America produces 20 to 30 tons per acre. Imperial County, 50 tons per acre. Double the national average. Farmers like Jason Taylor, fourth-generation grower, he doesn't just hit 50 tons, he holds the world record for sugar content percentage in his beets. Why is Imperial County so dominant? 3 things you can't replicate: nutrient-rich soil from ancient Colorado river floods, 365 days of sunshine, reversed growing season. They plant in fall, harvest in spring, when the rest of America is still frozen. This is literally the best sugar beet land on planet Earth, and it just became worthless. September 9th, 2025. The Imperial County Board of Supervisors holds an emergency meeting. They unanimously pass a resolution declaring a state of economic emergency. They send a clear message to Sacramento and Washington, D.C. We need intervention now. Here's what's at stake: 700 families without income, $243 million economic impact, gone. $35 million in lost wages, $16.7 million in payroll disappearing, 21.5% unemployment rate, the highest in California. For context, California's state average is 5.2%. Imperial County is 4 times higher. This is a county with only 60,000 total jobs. Losing 700 in one corporate decision is catastrophic. So what does Governor Newsom's office say? Quote, "We are monitoring the situation." Monitoring. County supervisors fly to Washington, D.C., begging for a new federal sugar quota. They're exploring if the state can fund a replacement factory. They're asking for help transitioning farmers to alternative crops. And the governor's office? Still monitoring. Now here's the response from agricultural experts when asked about switching to alternative crops like alfalfa or hemp. Quote, "Those markets are already oversaturated. So even the transition plan doesn't work." Meanwhile, SMBSC is already reinvesting in their Minnesota facility. They're not coming back. They got what they wanted, the quota. But wait, because there's one more layer to this that nobody's talking about. 2 months after Spreckels announces closure, Imperial County gets another notice. Calipatria State Prison, one of the region's other major employers, is threatened with closure due to California's state budget crisis. 2 massive job centers, both at risk, same county, same year. This is what economic collapse looks like in real time. And here's the pattern you need to see. Since 2000, 28 sugar processing facilities have shut down across America. Only 43 remain. Manteca, California, closed. Tracy, California, closed. Woodland, California, closed. Mendota, California, closed. Brawley, California, closed. California used to have 5 major sugar processors. Now it has 0. And every single time, the same thing happens. The quota transfers, the jobs leave, the state monitors. This isn't about one plant in Imperial County. This is about corporate America consolidating entire industries into fewer and fewer facilities. Rural communities across the country are being hollowed out by the same playbook. And there's one more thing they don't want you to know. Here's what really happened in Imperial County. Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative didn't lose money for a decade by accident. They extracted value, absorbed quota rights, and then consolidated production to their home state where they have newer facilities and better tax incentives. The $100 million they invested? That wasn't charity. That was the cost of buying California's quota allocation. The farmers in Imperial County are left holding 23,000 acres of crops with no buyer. Not because there's no demand for sugar, not because their land is bad, but because SMBSC controls who can process their beets, and they decided California's quota is worth more in Minnesota. Governor Newsom's office monitoring the situation while 700 families lose their livelihoods isn't a failure of attention, it's a feature of the system. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. California's political class benefits from consolidation too. Fewer facilities means fewer environmental permits to manage, fewer labor disputes, fewer rural constituencies to negotiate with. The Imperial Valley is too poor, too brown, too far from Sacramento to matter. And so the last sugar plant in California leaves. The quota goes to Minnesota, the farmers are told to transition to crops that don't need processing, and 150 years of agricultural history dies. Not because it had to, but because it was profitable for someone else.